Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be discussing Steve Lawson and his repentance. Now, this is a story kind of concluded. We kind of uncovered every stone. And I said I didn't want to talk about the story anymore unless this was the story that he is repentant. And I want to provide coverage of that for a number of reasons. One, it's good news. And it shows us that Jesus does not lose his sheep. It is the lost sheep, the lost coin. It is these parables that Jesus tells us about his believers that even if they stumble, Jesus will find them and he will make sure that they are not lost. This is what the Bible teaches about his believers, that his salvation cannot be lost. So that is good news. And that, fortunately, is the case for Steve Lawson, as opposed to the alternative of him completely deconstructing and revealing that he was never saved at all. So we got to share the good news here, and that is Steve Lawson is repentant. And this is beautiful news. Even though that he did a terrible thing, he repented. And that is good news. I can't stress enough how good of news that is. This is something that angels rejoice over. So, a lot of people, because I've done a lot of videos, I pretty much read every comment. I don't respond to every comment. But so many comments were very nasty towards Steve Lawson. And I just got to say, there are some people who do not want to recognize repentance of someone who has done something really bad. And we need to counteract that instinct. So let's dive into today's story. But first, I want to let you know Evangelical Dark Web is a Christian news gathering and commentary ministry. We're specifically going to be talking about two articles that were written, and I'll be using my own article to kind of go through this story. But one was written by Julie Roys, who is fake news, and the other by a pastor who's trying to set the record straight. So that is what we're going to dive into in today's video. And you can support us over our Patreon-like system at evangelicaldarkweb.org. We have a patron-like system. And I have a book, Winning Not Winsome, 10 Commandments of Spiritual Warfare, on Amazon or wherever, linked in the description below. So this is my article on Steve Lawson, reportedly repentant. And again, this is a story that has been riddled with a lot of contradicting details. A lot of it does have to stem with Trinity Bible Church in Dallas, Texas, which has maintained that Steve Lawson was unrepentant and a member of their church. This had to do with leaked audio from a meeting that they had with members, or a Q&A or something like that. It was leaked. Protestia got it, and uh, it's kind of disgusting what became of that, because the Trinity Bible Church elders made it seem like the people who had left their church had a celebrity worship problem, when it's kind of the opposite of the case, where they allowed him to only be a lead preacher because of a celebrity worship problem. So there's a lot of it's everyone's fault but ours. Not that the fault doesn't lie on Steve Lawson and his mistress, but the thing is, there are things they could have done that could have prevented this, and if he was unrepentant as they claim, they could have enacted church discipline. But that is not the case, and nor did the church discipline ever happen. So there are a lot of conflicting details about his repentance, and whether he was a member or not of that church. But we're going to focus on the next part of this story, which has more to do with this guy is in a church. He is working closely with other believers to get back on the right track, and he's trying to make efforts to reconcile with his family. This is doing the right thing after you've made a major screw up. And his pastor, Jim Bachman, decided to go to Julie Roys to divulge information that he should not be telling an enemy of the church. Julie Roys is someone who hates the church. She is an evil feminist, and she has no, and her outlet is not out to help the church. And he's going to get his comeuppance in the article that Julie Roys published. But we'll get to that towards the end. And then there's Clint Archer, who is a friend of Steve Lawson, is close to the situation, and wrote an account based on his conversations with Lawson. And he ultimately is trying to say, hey, Steve Lawson should come public with the information that um, I just laid out here and give his testimony and do a friendly interview to let people know what's going on. And Clint Archer does eventually offer to be that outlet to do the interview in writing or in video. Uh, but nevertheless, he writes that Lawson's relationship with the young woman, this is just an account of the scandal to catch you up. Lawson's relationship with the young woman was one of acquaintance then, friendship for approximately 5 years, but was not one of sexual nature until very shortly before it was exposed. So, like I said, it was sexual. Some people didn't believe me when I was pretty what's the word? Incredulous about the idea that this was never sexual. Just saying. After his adultery was discovered, Lawson confessed his sin to the elders of his church and to his family. He moved to Nashville to temporarily stay with his brother because that was all involved. Um, that is what all involved agreed would be best for the church and family as they all processed the shocking news. Lawson agreed to do so until such a time that his family and church felt it was appropriate for him to return to Dallas, though no period was stipulated. So this is Clint Archer talking. Um, so again, this is something that was a foolish decision that escalated, and thankfully it was exposed very shortly after it escalated to its, I don't want to use the word climax, but you know what I'm trying to say, because there is an escalation of sin. Um, so, despite bringing harm to his family, Steve Lawson is working to restore his relationships, contrary to what has been reported. Uh, while in Nashville, Clint Archer continues. He attends church with his brother. He's in daily contact with a few men who have experienced counseling pastors who were chosen by his spiritual leaders to counsel him and report to his elders and One Passion. That's Steve Lawson's past ministry. Lawson has remained in touch with his wife. He receives spiritual counsel daily from friends and counselors, and he has been back to Dallas to visit his wife, though he and elders of TBC agreed attending there would not be helpful. He is back in Nashville for the time being. So he has visited with his wife, but he's not living there permanently. Um, and he says Lawson is fully aware that he is permanently disqualified from ministry, and that is not under any illusion that he could ever be restored to a teaching position or ministry capacity that requires the qualifications of an elder. He returned to cash advances for book contracts he will no longer publish. He is considering avenues for secular employment. So, this is an important detail because Julie Roys framed her story as someone, she frames Jim Bachman, who's the pastor of Steve Lawson currently, as someone who will get Steve Lawson back into ministry position. And perhaps Bachman believes that, or perhaps Roys is twisting his words. I'm not sure which is true here. Lawson's apparently not under this impression, according to Clint Archer, who's a good friend of Lawson. Clint Archer firmly denies that he has been uncooperative with any parties involved, which is another detail that has not that which is a new revelation that contradicts previous reports that he's not cooperative, which is very discouraging, which I think had more to do with the TBC elders than anyone else. Despite his initial Clint Archer continues, sorry. Despite his initial hesitancy to volunteer details of his sin, he soon repented of that and offered a full and detailed confession to his elders and family. He has been fully cooperative with the elders at TBC, the board of One Passion, the appointed counselors, and his family's wishes for space, that's in quotes, to process the hurt that he caused them. He has not resisted any counsel that has been offered. Any allegations of being unrepentant or being under church discipline for unrepentance is unfounded. So, this is Clint Archer's explanation for why he's still a member in good standing at Trinity Bible Church because he's not unrepentant. Therefore, you cannot Matthew 18 him. And I do agree with his application of that text uh, in this example here. Archer explains that Lawson has been counseled against giving a public statement and further argues that he is radioactive. As for Jim Bachman, his good deeds by spilling the beans to the Roy's report did not go unpunished. Now, it wasn't Roy's herself who wrote this article, it was an underling of hers. But still, it was published by Julie Roys, whose editorial standards are subpar, and that's putting it kindly. As the liberal rag spends the end of their article airing out his dirty laundry to impugn his character. I don't know if this is like some sort of punishment for his indiscretion, his lack of wisdom in talking to this, but it's not a very short article, or it's not that long of an article talking about Steve Lawson, but half of it, like here to the end, is talking about Jim Bachman's past dirty laundry involving his time in the Presbyterian Church in America and the Nashville Presbytery and the drama therein. So, for his good deeds and going to the Roy's report, they trash him. And I'm not going to say I love to see that, but he deserved that for being so unwise in this situation. Julie Roys, again, not the author herself, set the editorial understanding for her hit piece. Steve Lawson is repentant. This is the story, that Steve Lawson is repentant, not peddling delusions that he will be restored to ministry. And that is what Julie Roys did. But Steve Lawson being repentant, this, again, I can't stress it enough, is good news, especially if you care about his soul and for his family as well. So that's all I got to say about that. And hopefully that's the last of this story. Have a blessed day. Stay based. Christ is King. And we will catch you on the next one.